everyone. This is Dr. Joanna Kujawa, Joanna for you, for the Goddess News blog and my YouTube channel. So today we have a very special guest and a friend, Miguel Conner from Aeon Byte Gnostic Radio, and I'll post a link below later if you are interested to check out his podcast, which I think is marvelous. And also just to let you know that this conversation is going to be more on a radical side. So if you're freaked out, just check out other videos, don't give up on us. And if you like this video, please post comments and sign up if you can. And also the reason why I invited Miguel, there are many reasons, but one of the reasons why I invited Miguel to discuss Sophia from a slightly different angle than my own video, which you can also check out, is that I honestly believe that Miguel is the most knowledgeable person alive on Gnosticism. Because other, academics, especially academics, they are very knowledgeable, but they are like in their own wormhole. So they can tell you something exactly, perfectly, on one topic. And but he has this kind of breadth of knowledge, which is really wonderful, especially when you want to have a podcasting and blogging that is based on solid scholarship and research. So that's why, great pleasure. I would like to introduce again Miguel Conner of Chicago, right? You're still in Chicago, right? Okay.
No, I moved away from about 35 miles north of Chicago in the country.
Okay. So just a bit closer to Canada, right?
Definitely a little bit closer to Canada.
Okay, that's because I used to live in Toronto. Now I live in tropical Australia, so that's why I actually have a big cup of coffee, because it is high noon here and maybe not so hot for tropical Australia, but hot for me because it's about 95 Fahrenheit in yours. So, and I don't have the aircon here. That's why I have a fan going on here. So if you see my hair flying, it is because, I have a fan on full power going, right? So 95 is kind of okay-ish here, okay? But
oh my God. We are at 0 Fahrenheit here and it's snowing, so a little bit different.
A little bit different, yes. A little bit different. So Miguel, would you like to tell us something about yourself that I perhaps missed out? Miguel also wrote 2 books, right? So if you want to...
Yeah. I mean, I think to find out my work, just go to thegodabovegod.com. I've got my books, podcasts, articles, videos, social media, all that stuff. And your audience can be the judge afterwards if they want to find out more or run for the hills.
So this is, as I said, probably, I don't know, I'm just speaking ahead, knowing Miguel and the effect he has on me, although, trust me, I'm trying to be good, although I'm more of a heretical nature. So can we start with questions, Miguel? Because today I want to devote conversation to Goddess Sophia, which is in most terms, I think she's known as a Gnostic Goddess Sophia, right? So I would like to ask you why, and I have specific questions because I want you to actually clarify something for myself and our audience. Why do you think the Gnostics consider Sophia as an important goddess or deity? Where does she fit in actually, and why is she important? Because this is how originally I learned about her when I started to be interested in Gnosticism.
Well, because she's the best goddess. As simple as that. Why are we even talking about all the rest are just phonies? Just kidding. I think I was thinking because she is a representation of wisdom. But at the same time, they didn't really see her as a goddess. There's not that much hymns or anything to her. There's a few, but she also represents she's a great representation of the soul falling into matter and how to return to the home. I think in those times, the Hellenized times, the Greco-Roman times in late antiquity, obviously wisdom was very important. I mean, the philosophers were the ones who were shaping the world and shaping reality.
These were the days, my friend. These were the days, right?
Yes. They were the rock stars of those days. And
I missed my time.
And what did Socrates say? Philosophy is simply dying before you die. It's transforming yourself before you die, or as the Gnostics would say, dying and resurrecting like Christ before. Oh, there's a snowplow out there. Of course, it happens right now. But yeah, as the Gospel of Philip says, yeah, becoming a Christ. So that was a huge impetus. So the idea of holy wisdom or divine wisdom was very important to mystics, to those speculating and so forth. And they also had a heritage too. They were very loyal to the Old Testament, or at least the secret story behind the Old Testament, the hidden wisdom that you find in the Old Testament. Chokmah, as she is known. And that was also very important too. Right? I'm sorry?
In the Jewish tradition, right?
In the Jewish, yes. So she, and obviously in the Jewish tradition, you find this figure in the book of Proverbs and other places. And you also find her in you find it in the Catholic Bible, not in the Protestant one, the Wisdom of Solomon or Wisdom, where you have this powerful feminine figure that is wisdom, and she's actually a creator being who oversees the world. In Proverbs, they would find this wisdom being that was actually in many places fallen. And as they saw that the Gnostics assumed, well, if there is this wisdom of God that is fallen, then perhaps this might be the reason God is how he is, the male counterpart. He has lost his wisdom, and therefore that is why this world is fallen. They would take it even, and of course, as you start doing some research, even more research, you find out in the book of Proverbs, there is not even just one wisdom goddess. There's actually two. There is one that is Lady Wisdom or Divine Wisdom. The other one is what they call the strange woman. And she is sort of this harlot figure in the book of Proverbs. And as you start to uncover a lot about the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible, you do find that there was a divine feminine, a dual aspect, divine feminine that was hidden, that was sort of censored. And this divine figure, or two-faced divine figure, was known as a Shira, but also as a Nat. And as some have speculated, including Clive Prince and Lynn Picknett in their great book, When God Had a Wife, the Gnostics were these, basically, it's very possible, and that they kept this secret hidden wisdom, the wisdom of the ages, a shamanistic, holistic aspect of Judaism or even the Mediterranean, and sort of went underground, and then it sort of resurfaced with the Gnostics. And of course, this was fused with the perfect timing, great bedfellows with the mystic Hellenized idea of being lovers of wisdom. And that's how the Gnostics basically rose. And that's why they see so much, they have such an allegiance to divine wisdom, that like humanity, we're all trapped in this world. And it's probably wisdom might be here in this world trying to help us get out, to be restored to the Godhead.
That's very, thank you for this. That's wonderful. And the reason why I also started to be interested in Sophia, because I wasn't originally interested in the Gnostics, it is that exactly I was looking for this. I was surprised that there's this figure of the divine feminine, which is actually wisdom, because obviously women were very often denied wisdom, or they're pushed away from even education for millennia. And then there are just signs of this here and there, but very often, and I'm writing it in my book when I write about secret knowledge, but somehow, there were often this wisdom was somehow always or often connected with this example of a harlot also. So I thought there's something lost, something is just not right. And I think it's not, hey, it's us, or something in the world, right? Like something in the matrix is not connecting. In a brief conversation before we started recording, we're saying, how difficult it is actually to make sense and make things align in our lives, right? So this is like the lost wisdom somewhere. right?
Exactly. I think we all can relate to that. There's something missing in this world, and even Gnostic texts do say, "Sophia, our sister, she who is a whore."
Yes.
And that is because obviously the ancient motif was not that you're literally a whore, is that the whore was a aphorism for a lost soul, a fallen soul. We are also whores.
Yes.
And in our material consumer life, I think many of us agree we are whores and prostitutes.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are here with wisdom lost. And even in the Gnostic text, there's a dual aspect to Sophia. There's sort of she has a manifestation as a higher wisdom, but she also has manifestations as a more I don't know, I don't want to say evil, dark in her aspect of Achamoth. So you have the Ashira, the wisdom goddess of fertility and carrying the information of the tribe, and then you've got Anat, who's the warrior, destructive goddess, the womb of nature that gives birth but also destroys too. You have this aspect with Sophia too that you find in the Gnostic Gospels. So it's very interesting. I was thinking of a conversation we had, Joanna, and I said I'm going to bring this up in this interview. But you had written about how you never liked Athena because she was so bookish and sort of cold. But the truth is, Athena is vicious. She is dark, dark. I mean, the way she treated Medusa,
Yeah.
the way she treated other humans and other gods. She was, this is the patron of Athens, the cradle of Western civilization. And she was dark, but she was a wisdom goddess. But it makes perfect sense because she was also Anat. She is the Greek representation of the vicious goddess, sexual goddess Anat. Obviously they took away the sexual part, but she still has this sort of well, she gets her kicks off of hurting other people. That's what Anat used to do in the myths. I mean, if she wasn't having sex, she was killing things off randomly and drinking and just being out of control. So it's
Maybe because she didn't have sex, you know.
well, yeah, well, Anat had a lot of sex. Anat would have sex with animals, gods, humans,
Wow.
whatever. But again, this is the great motif. Nature will do what it wants with you. And the other thing I wanted to talk to is whenever we talk about sex, because even in the Gnostic Gospels, individuals like James Robinson have said, well, maybe why did Sophia fall? Because as you know, in the myth, she rebels against the pleroma, the Gnostic version of heaven. And and it always says she wanted to know without the consent of her partner. James Robinson said, well, maybe she wanted to have sex without her partner, or she wanted to masturbate without her partner, and she was cast off into the world. And even when you use the word no, and it can mean sex. But I've realized too, also when you use the word sex, it can just mean knowledge. Somebody like Anat having sex with the world, she is spreading this dangerous information to the world.
That's very
I mean,
interesting.
when the Watchers have sex with the woman and create the Nephilim, they were handing down knowledge to these women. Even our mutual demiurge friend Zeus, I was always wondering, why is this guy having sex, non-consensual sex with women? And then
That's
I was
right.
wondering,
Greek
maybe
mythology
this
is
is
full of it, yeah.
yeah, maybe this is just a metaphor for information. Heaven brings down information, and of course this information will be given to the women because in ancient times they were the carriers of the knowledge, of the medicine, of scrolls, all that. So information from heaven, well, it's a very strong weight, and women had to carry this weight. They probably didn't have a choice because that was their role in the world, and they gave birth to demigods, which means this knowledge created more enlightened humans. Maybe I'm mansplaining, but in our interviews we go, whenever I say sex, think it's also knowledge, because sex at the end of the day is information. It's genetic, it's emotional, that's what sex is information.
So this is wow, there are so many things to cover now, because I was actually, now I have about 10 ideas in my head, and I think like which one I should discuss. First of all, fallen knowledge. recently I got very interested in listening to some podcasters on science, and they are all into artificial intelligence, astrophysicists and so on, but they are talking about AI. And I realized that this is like a great potential, for fallen science, and I just try to admonish them in my comments. Do you know what you're doing? We are not mature enough to create another being, and the being should truly be pissed off with us because we are absolute imperfect gods, and we shouldn't even go there until we figure out some basic stuff, about ourselves, right? And also, they shouldn't create something that has only rational mind, right? Because the rational mind is eventually going to destroy us, right? Like if we have only rational, this is what the Nazis
without wisdom, yes.
Reason but no emotion, right? So, and the first, intelligent AI was called Sophia, also completely freaked me out, so this is the one thing. Another thing that I would like to comment is that, of course, all of this that you said about the goddess, wisdom, sex, and so on, is also very present, and destruction is also very present in Hinduism. Some of the most powerful goddesses, like Kali, is exactly the same, right?
Yeah, Nod is very much like Kali.
Yeah. And also the fact that, the knowledge, as something that maybe is passed genetically, and that's why women's sex knowledge, it is kind of connected. And for Sophia, which, wow, I see like 10,000 blogs. Thank you. I like to go in wild directions, I focus, Joanna, focus. And also I just wanted to say that this idea survived to the Middle Ages, early Middle Ages, because when I was studying at the Pontifical Institute, we had to read a work by Boethius, and I think he's 5th century, and he was executed for something because he was a Roman, a traditional, from old Roman family. And by then Europe was invaded by the Germanic tribes, and they basically destroyed Rome and started their own kingdoms, right? And he wrote this book, Consolation of Philosophy. And then when he's in jail, he's basically have a discussion with this lady Wisdom, and he was later criticized by, Christians. So he didn't mention like Jesus once, or, Mary, the mother once, but he's having this conversation with Lady Wisdom. He continuously calls her Lady Wisdom. And I think that perhaps it was like the survival of Sophia, like he didn't call her Sophia, but exactly that the wisdom was somehow feminine, and it was this female figure that appears in his, in his cell, and he's having like deep philosophical conversations just before, days before he's executed. It's a kind of, if somebody wants to check, it's Boethius, Consolation of Philosophy. So I think Sophia is everywhere, it seems, like it's somehow present, right? And also, in Hinduism, they said that Maya is basically ignorance. So it's basically this combination of, what is gnosis and what is lack of gnosis, right? And it feels that Sophia is kind of getting in and out of this equation, right?
Like the Gospel of Philip says, the mother of all evil is ignorance. So in some Gnostic texts, Agnoia is the wife of the demiurge, the tyrant god who rules this universe, who is the son of Sophia.
Wow, so, I love it. I love it. So so you already discussed a little bit connection of Sophia and Jewish tradition a little bit. The reason why I'm not speaking much about it, because I know very little about it, so I'm sure if you want to elaborate, please do. But I wanted to also ask, because of my personal interests that are developing in this direction, about Sophia and Egyptian connection. Could you elaborate? You already mentioned the goddess, right? So,
right.
So, do you think, because originally when I started a long time ago, which in 2012, 13, when I started to be first time, like basically heard about Gnostics, in a serious way. And I was very much into Elaine Pagels. And in her, Gnostic Gospels, she said, oh, Gnostics are early Christians. But now we know it's not true. I mean, they were early Christians, but they were like carrying traditions from before that. At once, in one of my first talks, somebody in the audience said, oh, but they existed before Christians. And I remember saying, no, Elaine Pagels.
Oh my God.
So my apologies if this person is listening. So do you have something to say? Can we connect her part? Mentioned this Egyptian goddess already. but up to Egypt and its traditions.
Sure. I mean, first, it should be said, the Gnostic cosmology, or one of the main ones, where we can find this in Hinduism, but we're talking here on the West, where consciousness stirs up and sort of creates a version of himself. There's the great invisible spirit in the bar below, and they go into this sort of interaction. Again, it seems sexual, but again, think sex is information. This is the metaphor that these writers use. And they sort of emanate these aspects of itself, of consciousness, to create this heavenly realm, or idealized realm that the Gnostics call the pleroma, or the treasury of light. This is not found in the Greco-Roman tradition. It's not found in Judaism or early Christianity. The only place we found it, and again, this is the brilliant work of April DeConnick. Elaine Pagels had, she did well, but much of her scholarship is outdated, and unfortunately people still cling on it like it's gospel, which is silly, but
she did her part, but we moved on since then, right?
Yeah, but I think in a lot of ways she did more damage than good, but that's another subject we can get into. This creation myth is similar to the creation of the myth of Atum in Upper Egypt, and that is where you've got the god Atum suddenly stirs into consciousness and realizes, I am, right? In the myth, and he is depicted as a giant serpent, and he uses his tail to, again, think of the Ouroboros, but he basically has sex with his mouth. He inseminates his own mouth, again, information. He's going through a process of self-knowledge, of creation, and he gives birth to the Ennead, the 9 gods of Egypt. So we already have here that the Gnostics were drawing upon Egyptian lore for their creation myth and their gods. So later on, obviously, you have goddesses like Isis, who started out as she started more of a fertility goddess. She's very old, 2000 BC, 2400 BC, but around 1500 BC, she takes a bigger role. She's more of the creatrix. She's a more all-encompassing goddess. Later on, she becomes Hellenized because of Alexander the Great. Alexandria, she takes the role more of a wisdom goddess, like Sophia. In fact, some have said by the time Rome became Christian, 25% of the empire was a devotee of Isis. So she was very, very popular. Again, she was more similar to Sophia and Athena. She was more of a wisdom goddess. So for the Egyptian, you have to look at the around 1000 BC, you had the Jews in this place called Elephantine in Upper Egypt too. And these Hebrews or Jews were mercenaries. They're very warrior-like. Their main goddess was Anat. In fact, in the Ugarian text, Anat is married to Baal, but to these Jews, Anat was married to Yahweh. And of course, as you know, in mythology, someone said that Yahweh and Baal are actually the same god, just different names. So Anat becomes the main goddess for these Jews, but also in archaeology, they found that in the remains of these Jews in Elephantine, they have found iconography of Isis and what was the name of her sister? Nefertiti? Is it Nefertiti?
No.
Yeah.
She was a queen.
Yes, yeah. No, what was okay?
I know not something in. I forgot, but I know who you're talking about. In fact, I wrote a blog, but it's all gone now. So
yeah, I think it's yeah. But anyway, they have found iconography of Isis. Yeah. So these Jews definitely had an influence. Definitely also conflated Isis with Anat in their mythology, and of course, then Anat made her way through more of the mainstream of the Hebrew culture and people, and of course she then started interacting with Ashera, and again we have this dual face goddess. These also, some have said that Anat then basically became a cipher for another Egyptian goddess of war. What was her name? Satis. She was an Egyptian goddess of war, and then of course you've got what's the lioness? The Egyptian goddess who rides the lion, Sekhmet too. And Sekhmet was, in the Ennead, she was the daughter of Ra, and she was a war goddess that would help Ra fight. In fact, there's one myth where Ra goes to war with some other demons or something, and they win the war. But Sekhmet is still so full of bloodlust, she's going to go down to earth and destroy all of humanity. So Ra has to go and get a cup of blood that he leaves by a river, and Sekhmet comes and drinks it, and she gets drunk on the blood and passes out. But this is this is sort of the primordial dark nature of wisdom. Because think about this: in 1000 BC, if you wanted to be a full woman, you had to be wise. You had to know, again, knowledge of medicine. But guess what? You also had to be a warrior, because those were hard times where men and women had to be on the battlefield. So somebody like Anat would be considered the highest ideal for the tribe as far as the divine feminine. As society and civilization got more organized and technology advanced, and obviously somebody like Ashira would have been a more appropriate goddess for these ancient people.
Wow, that's very interesting. And so you think that Gnostics somehow picked up from this, and
yeah, no doubt, because even as Dr. James McGrath has said, he's made some good insights. The Mandeans, the Gnostics that are still around today in the Middle East, obviously a lot of them ended up in Australia where you are. He notices that their language and their terms are pre-exilic Hebrew, and he thinks that they actually were, their tradition came from the pre-exile Hebrew, and the name, and they mentioned the way the gods are and all that. So basically I'm saying that the Gnostics, it's very possible that they, in a contraband way, took these ancient wisdom goddesses, this ecstatic form of religiosity, the shamanistic attitude they had, that wiped out in Israel and in the Mediterranean, and then sort of came, and then it surfaced again. I mean, even some scholars have said that when you look at Simon Magus and his consort Helen, who are considered the fountainhead of Gnosticism, scholars have said that his cosmology and writings are very indebted to Egyptian lore. And of course, they had a sense of this sort of sexual rituals, more wild, untamed sort of living, which was very different than the Jesus movement, but it was parallel to the Jesus movement. So again, the idea of the Gnostics and the Hermetics drawing from ancient Egyptian mysteries and lore is it's a good case to make.
Thank you for this. And I was just thinking when you were talking about Simon and Helen, because I sometimes make this parallel between Simon and Helen and Jesus and Mary Magdalene, and there's this Sophia element in both women, which is Helen and Mary Magdalene. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, that's always been the intriguing thing. Are they both ciphers for each other, or were they two people in a parallel movement? Because remember, obviously, if Simon Magus is known by most people in Acts of the Apostles, right? He's the one, he's out there in Samaria doing all these magic tricks. Philip comes and says, come join us. All you need to do is accept the Holy Spirit. Simon goes and meets Peter. And then Simon is convinced he likes this movement, and he offers to buy the secrets of the Holy Spirit. And then Peter gets angry at him and scorns him. So the story is obviously very polemic, but it does tell us, the church fathers always said, well, Gnosticism came later than Christianity. It's like, no, because Simon Magus is a contemporary of Jesus. And it's interesting. I forgot what scholar said very astutely. Peter says, something like, you can join back with us when you get that intent out of your heart. Now, in most translations, and I'll translate, it says intent. The original Greek, guess what it is? Enoia, which is another word for Sophia, the first thought of God. So even Peter was like, if you get that wisdom out of your heart, that goddess or the Ellen, you can come back and be with the boys. And Simon, of course, didn't. So it's interesting to see, was Simon parallel to the Jesus movement, or some said they're kind of ciphers of each other. Simon and Helen are sort of the Rolling Stones, and Jesus and Mary Magdalene are the Beatles, and they were both
I love
they
it.
had their audiences. So it depends which one. I mean, Simon obviously was the magician and the sex magic with Ellen and the wild parties and this sort of ancient shamanistic barbarian attitude. And then you had Jesus and Mary Magdalene, who were more, let's be nice, let's just cure the sick and talk nicely to each other. So,
or maybe they have a polite version of the same couple, who knows, you know, like, so who knows, right? So wow, I really love how you made the comparison. It's really fantastic. Thank you. But why do you think actually, I'm going to make a bold statement, in most Western religions, you know, why did we maybe didn't lose completely, but kind of sidetracked or marginalized, you know, ecstatic movement? You know, like obviously we have some mystics and so on, but I mean, I think it makes sense to me that the best way to connect with the divine is actually through ecstasy. Don't you think so? And ecstasy, I mean a natural ecstasy, right? and you know, getting high on the divine, you know, and recognizing that divine in yourself and connecting, you know, to a larger universe, whatever it is, you know, intelligent thing that is going on around us, you know, and within us. So why is it, do you think it was just a means of controlling our own access to this amazing divine power which is within us and outside of us, and just to control it through clergy saying like, no, you cannot go there, it's too dangerous, you need like a priest or a, you know, monk to do this?
yeah, well, I mean, again, you can't have, well, first of all, of course, yes, it should always stress that Gnosticism or the Gnostics is an ecstatic religion. The rituals are ecstatic, they're shamanistic. There's no doubt about that one. But you can't have, or at least people thought, you can't have a proper civilization if you have individuals like Simon Magus or Anat or these figures that I keep saying who are so holistic and nature loving and Dionysian.
Yes.
How can you have a civilization? At some point, like Marduk had to kill Tiamat, and Marduk is the great example of order. The streets are going to be this way. We're going to plant our crops depending on this. We're going to have, we're going to brew beer and create walls. So we need a proper civilization. So at some point they said, no, well, these figures just don't fit what a proper civilization is. Anat has to go. We'll turn her into a Shira, or we'll put more money or more of our energy into Shira, but still she's too nature loving. No, we need civilization. A Shira has to go, and everything had to be more centralized. So this Gnostic, ancient Hebrew Egyptian sensibility had to be tossed out, which makes no sense because in Egypt you still had Thoth and Hermes, who were very shamanistic, and as we talked about everything about magic and astrology, were still fine, but in the Mediterranean and so forth, they had to go. And that's what happened. And it was really more about centralization, because something I learned recently is what the villain is centralization. Whenever Jerusalem and the Reformations of King Hezekiah and others were doing, not only were they destroying the groves of Asherah and changing history and making wisdom into a symbol instead of an actual person in the Hebrew Bible, they were also destroying other temples of Yahweh outside of Jerusalem. So it wasn't that, okay, Yahweh, and they were like, no, this is how civilization is. It's in the center, it's male dominated, and it's the Yahweh we want, which is closer to Marduk, the god of order. And that's basically what happened. And here we are, unbalanced.
Completely lost and
Unbalanced.
yeah, I'm not going to swear on my own show, but you know what I mean? Yeah, this is where we are, right? So
you and I agree. We had discussions. It's humanity is unbalanced, and here we are with this this world.
And in kind of astrological terms, so civilization, the way we practice it now, and I think we reached a completely dead end, there was one dead end, is very Saturnian, these are the rules. And part of me says like, no, we need to break the rules, I don't know how to exist without the rules, but I really long for it, because we are children of our times. But I think we also understand, and any thinking and sensitive person, that this is completely not working, whatever it is, right? The matrix or whatever, this kind of anal ruling of the universe, too much was lost. And I think we spoke about it on one of your shows, that I was once talking to a very highly positioned Catholic professor, a Jesuit, Harvard, and so on. And then he came once to a kind of to a Hindu ashram, who was the tantric Hindu ashram for a visit, meaning to give a talk. He behaved, okay? He behaved, everybody behaved. And then he saw, I was then part of that, the ecstasy, nothing was happening like inappropriate, but we were just feeling, whatever it was called originally Holy Spirit in Christianity, or, it was full of juice of life, juice of universe. And what in Hinduism is called Shakti. And I wonder if Sophia relates to this as well. And he said, I think in the church, we really lost it somewhere. And I thought it was grand of him to say it, because actually this is it. All that is left, in my opinion, in most Western religions is the ritual, is the ritual. And we lost the meaning also behind the ritual. I personally don't really like rituals, but I realize that, even when we talk about alternative spiritualities, people at certain point always ask me, Joanna, but how can we practice this? Right? So we are so, in a way, indoctrinated that we need a ritual. That has to be something that instead of having this ecstatic moment-to-moment relationship with cosmos, with the consciousness that is the universe and so on. Do you agree? Or because I think in your show also people ask, okay, do you know any Gnostic prayers? What Gnostic? So people basically want to replace old ritual with a new ritual. And lots of people still need rituals, right? And I think no, let's just be in this ecstatic union. And I think perhaps this is where also the kind of metaphor of sexuality comes, because this is, and this is appropriate, I think, metaphor, because this is when the union really happens, ecstatic union can happen. And this is like in the same way, spiritual union, if you can stay connected. It's just, obviously, if we knew how to stay connected, we wouldn't fall, right? Sophia wouldn't fall. So this is what I want to take you to the next point. My third question is, so because you mentioned the watchers, so I assume the watchers are fallen angels, right? Because you're much more
the watchers. Yeah, the watchers obviously in the Enochian literature are the fallen angels. They come down to earth to mate with the women, again, information, and they grant humans ideas like metallurgy and how women can use their makeup, very strange things. And then they breed, and of course they give the Nephilim, these giants who are become sort of the enemy of Yahweh in history. And what's interesting too is, I'm sorry?
So it means that fallen angels were good guys.
Well, that's the point. That's okay. That's, again, Sophia's gift is a double-edged sword. Wisdom is always a double-edged sword, because, again, this idea of a fallen entity, this archetype, is found in Sophia. She falls like the fallen angel. She falls from the pleroma, and her job is to help humanity. But she is, as we talked, she's sort of schizophrenic and lost in this world. She's very enigmatic and mercurial, just like the Watchers. And we find this in the myth of Prometheus. Prometheus wants to help mankind with fire, but his gifts always incur the wrath of Olympus. We find it with Loki. Hermes himself is a trickster god, helper of mankind. His gifts are always double-edged because, as I said, Hermes can lead the way or lead astray. So Sophia, the Watchers, Prometheus are part of this. Again, there are archetypal images of the gifts of the God, or the gifts of heaven, or the dangers of wisdom and knowledge, if you would. You were talking about AI. It's the same thing. It's is this going to do us well, or is it going to destroy us, or both? And it's the same with Prometheus and Sophia and the Watchers. I mean, I don't have the answers, and humans have been struggling with these answers of technology, magic, astrology, these things that seemingly come from a place of inspiration, a higher aspect of ourselves, the gods, but they're not really the gods. So
yeah,
that's
exactly.
an
And I'm going
interesting
to ask you
struggle.
a question. What are they? But first, I want to, before I lose this thought, I prefer Sophia to Prometheus, because he's very much like Christ figure, and all of his dying all the time, forever.
He's the first Christ figure in history. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just like it freaks me out. I think it's not fair, So when Sophia, I love in the myth of Sophia, she's basically kind of helped out by the cosmic Christ, right? I mean, pretty much, and she finds her way back eventually. So part of her is on earth, and part of her is in Pleroma, which is kind of a heaven. So what I think that it's probably, and I think you agree, she's really a metaphor for us, because I really think that we are exactly that, and the tragedy and glory of human life is that we are, half divine, half what we are. I wouldn't call it animal, because I actually like animals, and I think they are highly, evolved in a different way. But, we are in the kind of, wherever we are out of place pretty much, right? Because we are not really physical, and we are not really spiritual. We just this weird combination, right?
Yeah, like Terry Pratchett said, we are where the fallen angel meets the rising ape. We are unique. We are that nexus, and we are the trickster god. We are the Nephilim. We are Sophia. And we have the ability to create this art, this technology, this incredible things, but same ability that we can wipe out entire species, commit genocide with the technology that we invent, with the rationales we give ourselves, how we trick our own minds to do extremely stupid things and hurtful things to one another. So yeah, all these stories are really, in a way, they are about us. There's one story when we talk about the Nephilim. There is one story that the Jews have in one of their texts where the head of the Watchers, Azazel, goes to some really hot chick, and she's like, all right, and she won't put out, and she has a conversation, and eventually she actually has the angel give her the secret names of God. So when he does that, she just goes, I'm in charge now, and she's in control of the angels, and because she has the secret name of God, so she's able to have these angels work for humanity. So it's an interesting
and
twist to the story.
The story was repeated later, because Isis does it to Ra.
Yeah, she tricks Ra. You're right.
And Inanna tricks her grandfather. It's Enki, or I think her grandfather, or something like that. So go girls, because I actually, if I'm honest with myself, I really, one thing that I truly desire is wisdom. But I think that our civilization, the Saturnian civilization, the limited kind of matrix in which we live, when we rejected these other things, doesn't understand wisdom. We forgot too much, that we too closely associate wisdom with rational, logical thinking, which is what ancient Greeks really excel, Aristotle, and other guys. And I think that there's something profoundly wrong with this, because it's not a full wisdom. It is like a tiny aspect of the wisdom. And what terrifies me when I listen to scientists, and I told you that I got recently interested, but they actually do not even have a concept of another form of knowledge. They don't know anything about wisdom. It is just, algorithm is the beauty of life. And I think no, algorithm is not the beauty of life. Algorithm, it's not the beauty of life. It's just a rational way of looking at something, right? And there is so much, again, this kind of juiciness, the ecstasy is gone. And I think so perhaps this kind of Dionysian Sophian juiciness is maybe too wild to exist on itself, but these two have to be married, right? And science at the moment is completely connected just to the rational side of our brains, right? And other part is just rejected, right? That is completely rejected, and that's why there is no wisdom, so to speak, right? There is no Sophia, because something was buried, and we desperately needed to unbury you. So unbury the wisdom. So who do you think are these fallen angels? You know, are we moving towards some ancient aliens here? Do you think it's just consciousness, you know, or some entities? You know, what is it?
I don't know. I mean, as I like to realize, reality is very not interchange. It's interactive. How this otherness manifests into our world depends on our cultural context, our place in history. To some, they're angels. To others, there's aliens. In the future, they might be algorithms. I'm convinced there is an otherness, other forms of consciousness, but my little monkey brain cannot give specific answers, and everything shifts. I mean, I used to make fun of people like New Age who said that they can change reality. Now I think it's possible, but I think, do we change reality through our ego, what our ego wants, or do we change reality through what our higher self with a purpose wants? I think when we change reality with our ego, we end up with the story of the demiurge. We create false worlds, twisted scenarios, and that's it. So, but as far as the other one, I can't, it's up to you. Like you were talking about rituals, I think what makes people annoyed, and probably made people annoyed, is when people ask me what rituals I should do. I said, well, figure it out. I mean, the whole idea of gnosis is self-knowledge. I can't tell you what to do. I am not a guru. As soon as somebody tells you they're a guru, they're false. You are the Nephilim. You are Prometheus. You are Sophia. Only you know what brings you ecstasy. Maybe it's entheogens, maybe it's tantric, maybe it's going to mass, maybe it's working out. I don't know, but only you know. And that's the thing with the Gnostics, is the Gnostics were divided in ancient times in all these different lodges across the Roman Empire, and they all had completely different rituals. Maybe 5 people here, 5, you know, because their idea was, we're individuals, we're going to find what works for us. So I think that's probably another reason why Gnosticism is so in the minority, because it doesn't give you some formula of, you know, dots by numbers, how you're going to reach enlightenment or satori or ecstasy.
That's right. Yeah, I think it's a very good point. And you know, and the problem is also, you know, with you know, who is creating the multi universe, right? The other reality, because very few of us, and even some of us who had a glimpse of this, you know, of a better self or a higher self, as you know, in New Age parlance, you know, it's very difficult to stay there. It's almost like glimpse, you know, of our own glory, and then we're, you know, the higher you go, the lower you go, you know, like, but my husband once explained to me, you know, that the higher you go, the lower you go, but it comes closer eventually with practice, you know. So for example, certain practices can do this. So the only practice that I would advise is personally, except for pursuing knowledge, is also meditation, you know, because this is the moment when you can open up my mind is so full that, you know, if I can stop for a moment, you know, I hope that maybe like some sacred opening, you know what I mean, like something enters this. So and you know, because some people would argue, because for example, Diana Pasulka in her book, you know, American Cosmic, she said, she gives this example of a couple, you know, they were praying for something, and then, you know, the wife thought that it was an angel, that because some kind of, you know, event happened in the living room, and the wife thought it was an angel, and the man thought it was a UFO. Right? So yeah, who are these entities, right? I tend to also think that they are also kind of a production of our consciousness, you know, on a different level, right? So
yeah, we don't know. I mean, like Whitley Strieber in his account community, he's never said they're angels, demons. You know, he's always said, I don't know. They're another otherness that are filtered through my mind, filters the images and everything else. But at the end of the day, I don't know. It's like telling my dog to describe a hologram, or, you know, it just can't, it's not built to know these things.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we have a long way to go. And I have another question that quite interestingly, recently, I think I shared it with you, I was contacted by the Knight Templars in Poland, and then in a few days ago from Ireland. So, it's really interesting, yes? So I just want to know, could you enlighten us a little bit about, the connection between Sophia and the Templars, because there is something, and also Freddie Silva was talking about the connection between the Templars and Mary Magdalene, and I connect also with Sophia. So I just wonder, can you give us your take or what you know about it?
Yeah, and actually does have to do with our conversation. I won't get into Freddie Silva and Mary Magdalene for your audience and you. Yes, Mary Magdalene is certainly a manifestation of Sophia, almost to the T, just like Ellen of Tyre, Simon's consort. I mean, they are the earthly manifestations in their tales and stories, how they speak, everything else. But the one I would say, which I find the most intriguing, is there's a book written by Tracy Twyman and Alex Rivera called Baphomet, the Templar Mystery Unveiled. And they do an excellent job, and it's a huge book of connecting the Templars to the Gnostics. And in fact, again, I think Pope Pius always said that the Templars and the Freemasons were influenced by Gnosticism. Could be a polemic. There was the great Freemason scholar, Albert Mackey, who also said that the Freemasons and the Templars were influenced by Gnosticism. But the one I would say is there's, in their research, they came to the work of an individual called Hammer Purgstall, Joseph von Hammer Purgstall, an occult historian in the 19th century, I believe, who found these relics and paintings that he claimed were from the days of the Templars. And he found this painting that was very similar to, or had a lot of parallels to, the Baphomet that we know in art. But instead of being Baphomet, the symbolism actually went to Cybele, the ancient goddess. We didn't talk about, but Cybele is certainly this sort of primordial wisdom goddess. A meteor came down, and these ancients worshipped the goddess of divination and witchcraft, very Sophianic, primordial Sophianic. So Hammer Purgstall then was able to offer an argument that if your listener or your viewers don't know, the Knights Templar were accused of worshiping the head of Baphomet, and scholars have said Baphomet, it was a corruption of Muhammad, that they were actually in cahoots with the Arabs. But he says no, the word meat is actually an ancient secret word for Sophia. So Baphomet actually means baptism of wisdom.
Wow.
Yeah. And what they practiced was what Arab magicians did call the teraphim, which was to worship the head of some relic. Like, people had the head of John the Baptist, or some guru or master. They would just, for divination purposes. But having said that, they had found this ancient tradition of Sophia, and again, we're talking the more lower earthly, wild, magical, witchy Sophia, the Anat aspect of Sophia, and they had tapped into that to use their powers. And they go to again, I brought some of the historians, but they use more historians, and again, they see, Baphomet is simply another aspect of Sophia, probably going back to Cybele. And they have this very interesting, they take it back to a lot of the Kabbalistic lore. I don't know if you've heard this myth where the serpent in the garden is actually Lilith and Samael. It's this ancient dragon. Again, we're talking about dragons who hated Yahweh. And so this serpent tricks Adam and Eve, and then later on, but this serpent is extremely powerful. I forget, it's the offspring of another very powerful angel. So Yahweh gets mad and splits the serpent into Lilith and Samael, and sends them out. And the legends in a lot of the Kabbalistic lore is when Samael and Lilith get together, they will bring about the apocalypse, because, you know, the tale of the hermaphrodites, like the twisted version, male anima, the dark anima and animus meet, it means the end of the world. And Alex and Tracy are able to connect this to a lot of the Gnostic sects, because there was this sect of Gnosticism called the Cainites. They believed that the world was actually, there was a giant womb in the sky giving creation. They wanted to use magic to destroy this womb and bring it down to bring about the end of the world. And even Hammer Perkstall, he believed that the Knights Templars were descendants of the Ophites, the snake worshipping Gnostics of ancient times that could use a lot of dark magic, who also might have bring apocalyptic times. So it's a wonderful book. I would tell your audience, if they get a chance to read it, it's, you know, probably about 800 pages, but they do a very good job. But a lot of this is speculation, but I think it's as close, well, not the closest we'll come to connecting the Templars to Sophia or the Gnostics, because remember, the Templars had a sigil, they had an amulet, a seal guarding their treasure, and this is historically verified by every scholar. They had the representation of Abraxas guarding their treasure, so they knew, because obviously in ancient times, Abraxas was the great, one of the gems of Abraxas were charged with powerful magic and can ward off spirits and grant powers to individuals. So why these pious monks were using one of the most magical symbols of ancient times to guard their treasure? Well, and obviously Abraxas is very connected to Gnosticism.
So in this way, in a way, they were connected to this darker side of Sophia, you know, like...
yeah, I mean, we're going to Anat and Cybele, and this is again according to Alex and Tracy Twyman. So it's the theme.
Well, thank you so much. Would you like to add anything to, you know, but I didn't cover in my questions. I mean, so much, I know you know so much about Sophia, but would you like to close it with something else that I think I completely missed in our conversation?
No, I think we did a good job. I just hope you can rethink and forgive Athena. Now that you know her real identity, now you can see who Athena really is. She's not the Greek goddess you thought she was.
Thank you. No. Look, I love Athena. I think it's just a split in my own psyche, you know, and I think I'm kind of half Athena, half Aphrodite, and I don't know how to connect them. You know what I mean? Like these two things. So thank you so much. And for our viewers, if you like it, you know, please subscribe, or you can check other videos and like the video. Thank you so much. And I'll have another moment with you, Miguel, okay?
I always enjoy talking to you. Thank you.